Suppose you beat the buggers, and your name is known, the way Mazer Racken's name is known. Let somebody else be famous. Peter wants to be famous. Let him save the world. I'm not talking about fame, Ender. I'm not talking about power either. I'm talking about accidents, just like the accident that Mazer Racken happened to be the one who was there when somebody had to stop the buggers. If I'm here, said Ender, then I won't be there. Somebody else will. Let them have the accident. His tone of weary unconcern infuriated her. I'm talking about my life, you self-centered little bastard. If her words bothered him, he didn't show it, just lay there, eyes closed. When you were little, and Peter tortured you, it's a good thing I didn't lay back and wait for Mom and Dad to save you. They never understood how dangerous Peter was. I knew you had the monitor, but I didn't wait for them either. Do you know what Peter used to do to me because I stopped him from hurting you? Shut up, Ender whispered. Because she saw that his chest was trembling. Because she knew that she had indeed hurt him. Because she knew that just like Peter, she had found his weakest place and stabbed him there. She fell silent. I can't beat them, Ender said softly. I'll be out there like Mazer Racken one day, and everybody will be depending on me, and I won't be able to do it. If you can't Ender, then nobody could. If you can't beat them, then they deserve to win, because they're stronger and better than us. It won't be your fault. Tell it to the dead. If not you, then who? Anybody. Nobody, Ender. I'll tell you something. If you try and lose, then it isn't your fault. But if you don't try and we lose, then it's all your fault. You killed us all. I'm a killer no matter what. What else should you be? Human beings tend to evolve brains in order to lie around on lakes. Killing's the first thing we learned. And a good thing we did. We'd be dead. The tigers would be on the earth. I could never beat Peter. No matter what I said or did, I never could. So it came back to Peter. He was years older than you, and stronger. So are the buggers. She could see his reasoning, or rather, his unreasoning. He could win all he wanted, but if he knew in his heart that there was always someone who could destroy him, he always knew that he had not really won because there was Peter, undefeated champion. You want to beat Peter? She asked. No, he answered. Beat the buggers. Then come home and see who notices Peter Wiggins anymore. Look him in the eye when all the world loves and reveres you. That'll be defeat in his eyes, Ender. That's how you win. You don't understand, he said. Yes, I do. No, you don't. I don't want to beat Peter. Then what do you want? I want him to love me. She had no answer. As far as she knew, Peter didn't love anybody. Ender said nothing more, just lay there, and lay there. Finally, Valentine, the sweat dripping off of her, the mosquitoes beginning to hover over as dusk came on, took one final dip in the water, and then began to push the raft into shore. Ender showed no sign that he knew what she was doing, but his irregular breathing told her that he was not asleep. When they got to the shore, she climbed onto the dock and said, I love you, Ender, more than ever, no matter what you decide. He didn't answer. She doubted that he believed her. She walked back up the hill, savagely angry at them for making her come to Ender like this, for she had, after all, done just what they wanted. She had talked Ender into going back into his training, and he wouldn't soon forgive her for that. Ender came in the door, still wet from his last dip in the lake. It was dark outside, and dark in the room where Graham waited for him. Are we going now? Asked Ender. If you want to, Graham said. When? on the scum of the still water near the shore. Ender said nothing. We train our commanders the way we do because that's what it takes. They have to think in certain ways. They can't be distracted by a lot of things, so we isolate them. Keep you separate, and it works. But it's so easy when you never meet people, when you never know the earth itself, when you live with metal walls keeping out the cold of space. It's easy to forget why Earth is worth saving, why the world full of people might be worth the price you pay. So that's why you brought me here, thought Ender. With all your hurry, that's why you took 3 months to make me love Earth. Well, it worked. All your tricks worked. Valentine, too. She was another one of the tricks to make me remember that I'm not going to school for myself. Well, I remember. I may have used Valentine, said Graf, and you may hate me for it, Ender. But keep this in mind. It only works because of what's between you. That's real. That's what matters. Billions of those connections between human beings. That's what you're fighting to keep alive. Ender turned his face to the window and watched the helicopters and dirigibles rise and fall. They took a helicopter to the IF spaceport at Stumpy Point. It was officially named for a dead henchman, but everybody called it Stumpy Point after the pitiful little town that had been paved over when they made the approaches to the vast islands of steel and concrete that dotted El Nico Sound. There were still water birds taking their fastidious little steps in the salt water, where mossy trees dipped down as if to drink. It began to rain lightly, and the concrete was black and slick. It was hard to tell where it left off and the sound began. Graf led him through a maze of clearances. Authority was a little plastic ball that Graf carried. He dropped it into chutes, and doors opened, and people stood up and saluted, and the chutes spat off the ball, and Graf went on. Ender noticed at first that everyone watched Graf. As they penetrated deeper into the spaceport, people began watching Ender. At first, it was the man of real authority they had noticed, but later, when everyone had authority, it was his cargo they cared to see. Only when Graf strapped himself into the shuttle seat beside him did Ender realize Graf was going to launch with him. How far? Asked Ender. How far are you going with me? Graf smiled thinly. All the way, Ender. Are they making you administrator of command school? No. So they had removed Graf from his post at battle school solely to accompany Ender to his next assignment. How important am I? He wondered. And like a whisper of Peter's voice inside his mind, he heard the question, how can I use this? He shuddered and tried to think of something else. Peter could have fantasies about ruling the world, but Ender didn't have them. Still, thinking back to his life in battle school, it occurred to him that although he had never sought power, he had always had it. But he decided that it was a power born of excellence, not of manipulation. He had no reason to be ashamed of it. He had never, except perhaps with Bean, used his power to hurt someone. And with Bean, things had worked well after all. Bean had become a friend, finally, to take the place of the lost ally, who in turn took the place of Valentine. Valentine, who was helping Peter in his plotting. Valentine, who still loved Ender no matter what happened. And following that train of thought led him back to Earth, back to the quiet hours in the center of the clear ringed water by a bowl of tree-covered hills. That is the Earth, he thought. Not a globe thousands of kilometers around, but a forest with a shining lake, a house hidden at the crest of the hill, high in the trees, a grassy slope spoke to him out of his far-off childhood. The same voice that had once protected him from terror. The same voice that he would do anything to keep alive, even return to school, even leave Earth behind again for another 4 or 40 or 4,000 years. Even if she loved Peter more. His eyes were closed, and he had not made any sound when breathing. Still, Graf reached out and touched his hand across the aisle. Ender stiffened in surprise, and Graf soon withdrew. But for a moment, Ender was struck with the startling thought that perhaps Graf felt some affection for him. But no, it was just another calculated gesture. Graf was creating a commander out of a little boy. No doubt Unit 17 in the course of studies included an affectionate gesture from the teacher. The shuttle reached the IPL satellite in only a few hours. Interplanetary launch was a city of 3,000 inhabitants, breathing oxygen from the plants that also fed them, drinking water that had already passed through their bodies 10,000 times, living only to service the tugs that did all the oxwork in the solar system, and the shuttles that took their cargoes and passengers back to the Earth or the Moon. It was a world where, briefly, Ender felt at home, since its floors sloped upward as they did in the battle school. Their tug was fairly new. The Hayat was constantly casting off its old vehicles and purchasing the latest models. It had just brought a vast load of drawn steel, processed by a factory ship that was taking apart minor planets in the asteroid belt. The steel would be dropped to the moon, and now the tug was linked to 14 barges. Graf dropped his ball into the reader again, however, and the barges were uncoupled from the tug. It would be making a fast run this time, to a destination of Graf's specification, not to be stated until the tug had cut loose from IPL. It's no great secret, said the tug's captain. Whenever the destination is unknown, it's for ISL. By analogy with IPL, Ender decided that the letters meant interstellar launch. This time, it isn't, said Graf. Where then? I have command. I don't have the security clearance to even know where that is, sir. Your ship knows, said Graf. Just let the computer have a look at this, and follow the course it plots. He handed the captain the plastic ball. And I'm supposed to close my